Hey, it's Joe Crump. We're still talking about exit strategies while analyzing deals. When you analyze a deal and trying to figure out which one makes the most sense, you've got to look at the exit strategies and how you're going to unload that property, how you're going to make money on that property. And what we're going to talk about today are the tax implications. If it's a long-term investment, you're going to have depreciation on that property if you're an active investor. And if you're not an active investor, then it's going to be depreciation on the passive investment, and there are limits on how much you can take. So you almost always want to be able to be labeled by the IRS as an active investor. So talk to your CPA when you're doing that to make sure that they label you that way. Most CPAs don't understand rental properties, so you're going to have to do a little bit of research on your own, or talk to me and learn how to structure some of these things. Now, I'm not a CPA, and I don't give CPA advice, but I can give you general, broad ideas, and I can show you the stuff that I'm doing. And because believe me, I'm taking as many deductions as I can that are legitimate. And I take my depreciation on all the rental properties that I own, all the long-term investment properties that I own. I take them as active investments, so it reduces my active income. The salary that I bring in, it reduces all that and makes my annual tax hit much lower because I own so much property. And if you use the techniques that I've been teaching, the zero down techniques especially, you can amass a lot of property, and you can have a lot of properties in your portfolio without using any cash and having all this depreciation, every year, reducing your tax bill to next to nothing. So really important part of the long-term investment strategy, exit strategies. The other is appreciation. Lately, we've seen depreciation in the values of the property, which is not good. But over the years, over the long term, you're going to see appreciation in the value of the property. And to think that it's going to go up 2, 3, 4% a year annually in most parts of the country, even if you amortize it in places like California, if you take the really low down and the really high up times and then you even them out over the years, you're going to see probably an appreciation of 3 or 4% on long-term investment property, which is a good place to be. Now, if you happen to try to sell the property when you're at the bottom of a cycle, maybe you're not going to get that kind of return. But if you're keeping a property for 10, 20, 30, 40 years or more, which is probably what you should be doing if you're doing long-term investments, and you say, well, I'm 70 years old, I don't want to keep a property for 40 years. I want to, get in there and get out. Well, I would just keep it until you die. As long as it's creating income for you. Keep it till you die, then give it to your kids. You don't know how long you're going to live these days. You may live another 30, 40, 50 years. Technology is getting better and better. I'm planning on living to be 250 years old. I figure that if I can just get to 100, then they could probably get me another 20 years just by patching me up on the new technology they create. And then if I can just get that another 20 years, then maybe they can get me to 200 just by, getting me some more technology. And then if they can get me to 200, I could probably get myself a brand new body after then. So I plan on living a long time, and I plan on keeping these long-term investments to get me through that process. The other thing is the buy down on the loan with long-term investments. If you're buying these properties subject to the existing loan, for example, if you're buying them with a zero down structure, they all have loans on those properties, and most of those loans, when you buy subject to, you should get one that has an amortized loan. Don't usually get one that's just interest only unless you plan on paying it down every month. But you're going to pay down on a $150,000 property. You're probably going to pay down, $150 or $200 a month towards that property. So, every month you made $150 on that property just from the buy down on the loan. Hopefully, you made some money on the appreciation of the property. Hopefully, you made some money on the depreciation by the tax benefit on the deal, and then hopefully you made some cash flow because your rents keep going up every year. So there's lots of wonderful ways to make money on long-term investments. Just make sure when you analyze a deal, you see where that money's coming from, how much it's going to be, and whether or not it's going to make sense for either you to hold on to that property or to an investor who takes that property over. And again, if you're in a position to be able to buy that property and maintain it and hold on to it for the long term, does it make sense to you? If it does, and it probably would make sense to someone else, where you could sell it to them and make a chunk of money right then and there and do it as a short-term investment for yourself and a long-term investment for them. The other type is the short term. If you're selling a property short term, you got to look at your exit strategy, and that's going to require looking at things like capital gains taxes. If you make a chunk of money, you got to pay taxes on that money, unless that money happens to be in a Roth IRA where you can put the money right back into the Roth. But if you're taking that money out to live on or to run your business on, there's going to be taxes on it. And so having these passive investments on your portfolio, the long-term investments on your portfolio, will help offset the income that you make from the short-term investment. So when you look at these exit strategies and you think about short-term exit strategies, how much money can you make right now? And how much are you going to have to pay in taxes? And how are you going to use that to offset your costs? Because you can also deduct all the other costs that you have in the transaction to make that work. So anyway, when you're analyzing deals, you've got to take those things into account. And we're going to talk about some of these things when I get into analyzing specific deals, which we're going to do in the last 8 or 10 videos in this series. All right, hope that helps. Thanks.